So the 5 books I read last month were Nightfall by John Farris, Hunted by James Herbert, The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie, The Forbidden Knowledge by Stephen R. Donaldson, and lastly, Annihilation, by Jeff VanDerMeer. Let's start with the first one, so Nightfall by John Farris. I really enjoyed this book. I'm not usually a big fan of the slasher genre, but I really enjoyed this book, mainly because of how it's written, how well the book is written. It reminds me a lot of Halloween. So Angel, the main character in Nightfall, is essentially Michael Myers in Halloween. It starts off kind of in the same way that Halloween starts. Angel just escapes an asylum, and he's out there to kill members of his family, just like Michael Myers once again. In here, it's not his sister, unlike Michael Myers. In here, he's out there to kill his former ex-wife. I don't think they're separated yet, but I don't give too much to their wedding. But he's out there to kill his wife and their child that they have together. And it's essentially, we're going to see Angel, murder his way through his former wife, as I said. I really enjoyed this book mainly because of how well written it is by John Farris. He reminds me a lot of James Herbert, meaning, both of them give you just these small bits of information. They're not giving away too much at the start of their book. It's just, they're giving you just little pieces of information here and there, and you have to kind of picture it for yourself, what's going on, and continue reading to see what's going on, what's happening, and so on. The book title, so Nightfall, comes from this condition that one of the character has. I guess you could say he's the main character, but this character has this condition where he can't see at night. So when the sun sets, he can't see anything. He's blind, essentially, when it's dark. So I really enjoyed that because at one point he becomes kind of the hero figure, if we could say it like this. He's the guy who's going to protect the ex-wife from Angel and their kid also, but he has this blindness, when it's dark outside, so he's kind of not that strong, but we'll see at the end if he's able to protect the former wife and the child. Actually, I really enjoyed this book. It's started the month really strongly. It's one of my favorite book this month. This is not the last book I'm gonna read by Mr. Farris. I like this book. I like Nightfall so much that I'm definitely going to read some of his other books that he's written because I really enjoyed it. Secondly, we've got Haunted by James Herbert. So far, this is my favorite James Herbert book. There, I said it. I like this book even better than The Fog. The Fog was my favorite one so far from James Herbert. But in here, Haunted, it's a supernatural horror book, so that's just what I like best in horror. So it has everything. It checked all the right boxes in the right places. I really enjoyed this book. So we're following David Ash. So it's part of the David Ash trilogy. It's the first book in the trilogy. David Ash is a paranormal investigator. Not really an investigator, He's more a debunker of frauds, paranormal frauds, mediums and stuff like this, until, something happens to him, and we're following, what happens to him. It's a very cool book with a cool twist at the end, and we've got this typical James Herbert writing where he's just a master writer, in my opinion, because he just gives you just the right amount of information for you to just complete the picture in your mind. It's just so masterfully done, well written. Once again, I really enjoyed this book. It's my favorite James Herbert book so far, and that says a lot, actually. I can't wait to read more from him. I'm gonna continue reading this author. He might become my favorite author horror author because he's just, yeah, he's that good actually. I cannot recommend his books enough. Haunted is really good. Then I read The Blade itself by Joe Abercrombie. I said read, but I listened to it on audiobook. The guy, the narrator who's narrating the story is just doing such an amazing job. I really enjoyed this book. Fantasy is not really my cup of tea usually, but here it's a bit more dark fantasy than really fantasy. The magic system seems weird and not punishing, but a bit dark. I can't wait to really see a bit more what's going on, with Bias and being the first, not really the first, but I guess you'd say the second of the Magi because he was the apprentice of Juventus, who was the first Magi. I'm saying too much words that might not mean much to people who've not read this book, but I really enjoy it. All the characters are morally gray in here. There's just this one character that I didn't really care for, and it's Jazel. It's just, he's a bit boring. He might grow on me, but for now, he's the only character that I don't care much for. All the other characters are phenomenal, top-notch, well written. My favorite character is Glokta, the Inquisitor, so the torturer. I mean, he's a perfect character. He's unlikable at first, but the more you learn about him, the more you kind of understand him in a weird way. I don't want to understand somebody like this, but yet here I am, kind of rooting for him, even if he's a torturer and a very bad person. But yeah, I really enjoyed this character. I know for a fact that in the second book, he's becoming less of an asshole, but more of a likable character from where I am in book number 2, actually. But, more on that maybe later on when I finish the book. So The Blade itself is part of the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. It's not really clear what the story is going to be about, because we know that there's this war brewing, not only one war but 2 separate wars against the same kingdom. So there's this kingdom in between south and north, so in the middle, and there's a war brewing in the south, one in the north, and that's mainly it. We know there's political conspiracies happening. There's this magician that just appears out of nowhere, that he's hundreds of years old, maybe even more. We don't really know. So I really enjoyed the book, all the mysteries that it has, and the fact that we don't know much about it as of yet. We have to continue reading to understand what's really going on and what's at stake. At the same time, really enjoyed this book. Can't wait to read more. I'm reading book number 2 right now, and I'm liking it once again. So far, I'm really enjoying these books. Then I read Forbidden Knowledge by Stephen R. Donaldson, so book number 2 in the Gap series. I like this book even better than the first one, just because of how far he went with the power struggles that we were seeing in book number 1. I mean, the woman in the book, she's just such a badass. I mean, she has all the power. All the men are trying to have power over her, but they can't because she's just too much of a badass. And the dilemma that she has, this internal dilemma that she was having throughout this book, of being pregnant and not really wanted to keep the child, but wanted to. It's something horrible that women has to deal with, unfortunately, and it's sad. But here in this book, it was brought in a clever way and kind of I don't want to say it brought light into it, silver lining or anything, because not really, it's sad. It's a bit depressing at times, but it's so well done and it's so good. If you thought that the first book was misogynistic, it's because you've not read the second book, because it's not really, just because of how far he went into it and how well developed that woman character is. It's just, this guy is really a good author. I might read the Thomas Covenant afterwards. I know Thomas Covenant is more fantasy than sci-fi, but just because Mr. Donaldson is such a good writer, I mean, I just think I'll have to read Thomas Covenant because I'm really enjoying the Gap series so far. So the Gap series so far, you have this badass woman character, you have pirates in space, weird aliens thingies, almost horrific in a way. It's just, I mean, it got everything that interests me. So yeah, I'm really liking the Gap series so far. Can't wait to read what's going to come next, actually. Lastly, I read Annihilation by Jeff VanDerMeer. I wanted to read this book because I really enjoyed the movie. Book and movies are two separate things. Both of them are essentially the same, quote unquote, I don't want to say same story because it's not really. They're around the same topics, around the same area. They have the same characters, but they have so much differences between both of them that if you've enjoyed the movie, I'd recommend reading the book. And, vice versa. If you read the book and you've enjoyed it, I would recommend watching the movie because it adds another layer to the story. I just feel like, having watched the movie first and read the book, some things makes more sense afterwards. I kind of know what the ending is supposed to be, mainly because I watched the movie. So if you feel like the book ending was too vague and you want to have maybe more closure with the story, the movie did just that. It gives you a bit more closure with the ending because it has a more clear ending than the book. The book is really vague. It's left open. We don't really know what's going to happen because the main character has just stopped writing her diary. The story is about this expedition into Area X. So at this point, we know that there were at least 11 expeditions prior to this one. The only thing that's different this time around is that this expedition is made of women only. No men were present in that expedition, and we're following mainly from the point of view of this character, so the biologist. We're reading her diary essentially, and I really enjoyed this book. It's really vague because we're only seeing this point of view from this person, so the biologist, as I said. We're not really seeing the thoughts of the other characters because it's all, from the point of view of the biologist. Usually I don't care for this type of writing, and here it fits really great because the movie was cosmic horror, and it fits that genre, that feeling of impending doom by seeing just from the point of view of one person, how she's responding to everything around her. I wouldn't say that the book is cosmic horror though. That's the main difference between book and movie, is that in the book it's not clear if it has cosmic proportion or not. It's not really clear, and that's a good thing because the book really feels like a dream. So in a way we could say, this is cosmic horror because cosmic horror has a lot to do with dreams. And this book, I read this book almost like in a dream state or something like this. It's weird. It's hard to describe the feeling that I had while reading the book because I really felt like it has this dreamy quality to it. The way it's written is really dreamlike. I really enjoyed this book actually. Thank you for watching. If you've made it so far, I really appreciate it. Let me know if there's books that you feel like I should read, feel free to comment down below. Maybe authors that I should read. I'm really interested in reading, sci-fi horror. I've not really covered that in the channel, but that's something that I'm really interested in because I like horror and I like sci-fi, so maybe why not talk about these two genres together. So if you know any sci-fi horror story that I should read, let me know in the comments down below. I'm really interested in reading something sci-fi horror. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.